Welcome, everybody, to our latest Leaders in Housing Counseling call. I've got a good lineup today, and we're going to jump right in. And glad that you joined today. We're going to run through, we've got a lot happening in Congress, so Melody's going to give a good rundown on what we're doing and what we've still got to do. Big fight to get us back on track on housing counseling funding, and we're really pushing for $65 million. So lots that's happening on her front, and we'll spend a little bit of time on that in the beginning. Though I want to make a big thank you to everybody who's really done. We know you have a crowded agenda, and you've put a lot of energy into reaching out to your congressional offices, and this is really what it takes. So thank you so much on that. We're going to spend a few more minutes on the client management systems and on technology. We have David Young, who's becoming a regular here on our calls, but they're doing really helpful work on CMS, on their CMS survey, and we want to bring you up to date on this whole question about data standardization. So that'll be a good, helpful progress report with more to come in the future. Most of the call will be devoted to workforce development and housing counseling issues. We have James Ruddock, who's also becoming something of a regular here on our calls from Northwest Side Housing Center. Has always been a source of innovative and valuable programming. And we also have Mario Corona and Sasha Ontanego, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing your name even close to correctly, with Cara Connects, which is a group in Chicago that's doing some really excellent work that they've come together on, and will be helpful discussion. We'll do our usual plug on NHRC membership, and we are doing quite well starting this year, so really appreciate the fact that so many of you are committed to our work. And our next call will be April 4th, and we'll get Ellie at the end of the call to tell you what it's about. It should be pretty interesting. So with that quick note, let's quickly turn to our legislative update and federal funding.
Thank you, Bruce. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is Melody Emo, Policy and Program Director for NHRC. NHRC has been extremely busy working with Congress and working with all of you around the country on really trying to push Congress to fund Housing Counseling Assistance Program at HUD at $65 million for fiscal year 2020. We've had several strategies, as we discussed in previous calls, around programmatic funding request letters, dear colleagues, having calls with different staff in both the House and the Senate, and we've been making some progress there. So progress in terms of the dear colleague letters. Representative Kildee from Michigan in the House has just released the dear colleague letter asking his peers to support his efforts in getting housing counseling funded at $65 million. That was released on Wednesday. And as of Wednesday, it had 18 members of Congress in the House signed on so far. We're really excited that we're getting a significant number of members to join it. So for all those who've been pushing their legislators to support housing counseling, we appreciate that. I anticipate that there'll be more signatories in the upcoming weeks. As for the Senate, Senator Menendez will be releasing his own dear colleague shortly, and we'll let everyone know when that comes out. As for our own efforts, we published, yay, thank you everyone who helped us out with this, our own national sign-on letter. We had 364 groups around the country, as well as national groups sign on. We sent it out to Congress on Wednesday, and we're currently in the works with submitting to each state delegation their own state sign-on letter, showing them the different groups in their state and their districts that support housing counseling funding, and increasing it to $65 million. We hope to finish sending all those out this next week, excuse me. With the Senate, we released some of those letters already. You may have seen that in your inbox. And we'll be completing those this week. As the rest of our efforts go, we're continuing our conversations with Congress. When Congress comes back next week from District Work Week, we plan to schedule different conversations with those we've already submitted our national sign-on letter to, asking them if they would be open to having state delegation calls with groups in their states or holding in-district meetings in their upcoming district work week. But we're really excited for all the effort that we're currently having in the House and Senate. I anticipate that it will still be a challenge to get Republican lawmakers, and that's why we're asking different groups that we've worked with and reached out to that if you want, you please reach out to us. We want to have these calls with members. We want to have these in-district meetings, and we really, really need a Republican champion in the Senate to help us with our bipartisan efforts. With that, I'll turn it back over to Bruce.
So these are critical moments here, so thanks to everybody who's been doing all this work. If you have a Republican senator in your state, it's really worth reaching out to them if you haven't already and seeing if we can't get housing counseling at $65 million added to their priority letter, their appropriations request letter that they give the Appropriations Committee. That's the most valuable thing that can happen right now. We are very strong in the House. We were very strong last year in the House. Senate was the place where we actually lost our some funding this year and this past year, and we really have to recover there. So please, this is the week to do it in, or early next week. They have to have these letters submitted by April 4th, and they're making their decisions right now. So that's the high point of everything. Anything else you can do that's great, but reaching out, especially to Republican senators who might support us, will be hugely valuable. So, but we've had great response from the field, so it's pretty exciting. Thanks, everybody. Okay, so let's move on to our latest technology issues, and our head of our technology committee, David Young from Housing Action Illinois. So David, please bring us up to date. What's happening?
Certainly, Bruce. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll start with the Client Management System Guide. On March 14th, we did release the updated guide. We refer to it as CMS Guide 2.0. It is an online-only guide, different from the original publication that we did in 2016, where it was available online as a PDF as well as a published document. This one is online only, and I hope that people on the Leaders Call have had an opportunity to see it. If you have not yet, you can find it on the Housing Action Illinois website, which is housingactionil.org, and you just look for resources for housing counselors. We are very pleased with how the CMS 2.0 has come out. Our marketing team, led by Kristen Ginger, has done a fantastic job of presenting the information, we think, in a very clean and organized way, but also hope that you will get back to us with your feedback so that we can make improvements later on. And you can do that by reaching out to us at cms@housingactionil.org. Again, that's cms@housingactionil.org. We have looked at 13 client management systems that are currently publicly available and are meet the latest HUD standards. And we have started with a chart that provides some, very important information that whether the client management system has that or not. So, for example, we include information about what the base cost is, what's available in terms of data migration. If having a client management system that provides client-facing, where clients are able to enter in data themselves, for example, you can clearly see by looking at the chart which ones are client-facing and which ones are not, what the setup timeline is for getting the new system set up in your organization so that you're able to use it, and how many HUD-approved agencies are currently using the system. And then if you want to take a deeper dive about each one of the client management systems, under the deeper dive heading, you would click on the client management system that you're interested in, and you'll get a lot more information about that particular system, the cost, what tech support is available. You can then click, for example, under counseling and group education, and it will tell you all of the features, administration, client interface, reports and customization, and other notes and features. So there's a tremendous amount of information that is available for folks to use in order to make decisions. As you know, we were looking to get this out as quickly as possible because we know that a lot of organizations need to migrate away from HCO and need as much information in order to make a decision on which client management system to use. Now, as I've said on this call a few times before, and I'd like to just reiterate that the way that this guide works is it is not designed to tell a housing counseling organization that this is the best client management system or this is the worst client management system. It is designed to provide housing counseling organizations with more information so that you can then have a conversation with the CMS developer and ask some questions, get some real information about what system will be best for your organization. So the analogy that I can use is it's like buying an automobile. It is not the job of the car salesman to know everything about the car that you want to buy. It is the job of the car salesperson to sell you a car. Your responsibility as the buyer is to try and do as much research as possible and ask as many detailed questions so that you can make the right choice. And we're hoping that this guide will help you to do that. And again, if you have any feedback for us, we would love to hear it. You can reach out to us at CMS, that's C as in client, M as in management, S as in system, at housingactionil.org. Now I'm going to quickly pivot over to data standardization. For those of you who have been on this call, you know that we have been looking at how we can work to standardize our data and make sure that that data is all in the same format in our client management systems so that we can better show the impacts and the outcomes of the tremendous work that we do as an industry. And we have been working over the past couple of years to move this process forward. And it looks like we have secured some funding, which will allow us to hire a business analyst that can then research a data standard through the Mortgage Industry Management Organization, or MISMO, the Mortgage Industry Standards Management Organization, or MISMO, and make sure that the housing counseling data points that we need are in MISMO, and whatever is missing from MISMO, we can add, and then help housing counseling client management systems to make sure that they're using these formats. This will, again, help us to better make sure that we have uniform data and that we can better show the impacts and the outcomes that we have. So with this funding, we will need to hire a business analyst, and then once we hire a business analyst, that person or entity will move on and start doing the research, and then we'll be sharing that with the client management system developers and owners, as well as the housing counseling community, so that everyone is kept up to date on what's happening and how this is going to work. But at the end of this process, what we expect to happen is that we will have our data standards included in the MISMO Residential Logical Data Dictionary, that our client management systems will incorporate those standards into their systems or their architecture, which will allow us to then better communicate not only amongst ourselves, but with all of our partners and corporate entities to show what we're doing and how that's working. So we have So it's very exciting. It's great that we are in a position where we finally have some funding to move this forward. This is something that we first started talking about in 2017, and I will be periodically on the Leaders Call to update the audience as to how things are moving forward. And again, if you have any questions about that, any concerns, or you want to understand some things that are going on, feel free to reach out to me. You can reach me at David, D-A-V-I-D, at housingactionil.org. Anything else, Bruce?
That's great. I think this is actually a very important, the inner geek in me is singing. This is, this data standardization piece came out of a conversation we had a year and a half ago at the Leaders Conference about, boy, there are all these client management systems coming on the line. Does that mean we're going to have to rekey everything in? How are we going to manage all this? And the idea is that there'll be a standard data concept or set of rules, this MISMO that David talked about, that would allow us to not have to rekey everything in. And it actually opens up a whole bunch of different worlds for us, because it would allow us to communicate much more effectively with lenders, with Fannie and Freddie, with anybody in the financial services industry. So MISMO is the standard that they have all agreed upon would be the digital way of communicating, and this means that housing counseling gets integrated into that as well. So big thanks to all the work that David has done on this. We're about to go to the next level with this, with the contract he's working on to really define what already exists in MISMO that we can use, and secondly, use, as David said, which ones need to be added. And we've had very good early signs from MISMO that they're interested in getting us to be integrated in the system and would work with us on it. It's highly, highly technical. And then the big thing is that the client management systems need to actually use these standards, that they need to redefine how they look at each of these data fields so that it fits into MISMO. And that'll become the future of our work. So this is really kind of exciting. We're talking with the client management system providers next week, trying to bring them up to date on all this. I'm sure there'll be a lot of good conversation about this, but this is a major step forward. So nice work, David. Nice work to everybody else who's participated. Okay. Oh, and one other quick thing. We've had a lot of conversation about the shift with HCO coming to an end, and we are interested in hearing how things are going with Launchpad. So shoot David and me an email if you're actually a Launchpad user now, and give us some feedback on how it's working. You know, it's an area that people are very, very interested in. If there are other insights you've got about the process of adopting a different client management system, not just Launchpad, but I know groups are shifting to a number of them. You know, we'd be interested in hearing that, and maybe we'll have a conversation on the Leaders Call when people have more experience on how to manage this process. But thanks everybody for the good work they're doing there. So let's move on to our main topic, which is we have been highly focused on how to make mortgages more affordable and housing more affordable. On the other hand, the flip side of that is what are people's income situations, and we've done. We're going to continue. We're going to have a series of conversations about how to improve household incomes for people to make this to make the housing component work. And one of our places that some very innovative work is going on is with Northwest Side Housing Center, and they have reached out to a workforce development organization to help them kind of fit the pieces of the puzzle together to make both for individuals and for communities to help address this kind of issue. So I thought this would be an important one, because this is the kind of thing that we all need to be thinking about if we're going to really help our communities recover and have universal interest. So with that, we've got James Ruddick, who's been on before from Northwest Side Housing Center, and we also have from Cara Connects, the workforce development organization, Marielle Corona and Sasha Ontanego. I'm hoping I'm saying your name close to correctly, but welcome James, Marielle, and Sasha, and I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, Bruce. Thanks. Hi, everyone. This is James from Northwest Side Housing Center. I just want to make sure everyone can hear me okay.
Yes, you're good.
Okay, great. I'm going to really spend most of the time letting Marielle and Sasha talk because they're really the ones that I think are going to are really the unique ones here, and I think the ones that are going to help us as housing counseling agencies figure out how we can embed workforce into all that we do. But with that said, I thought I'd share a little bit about Northwest Side Housing Center again for folks that may not know who we are or what we do, and talk a little bit about how this all started, and then turn it over to them for the bulk of the time. So if we can move on to the next slide. Great, and that's just photos, both from Cara and us. And then a little bit about Northwest Side Housing Center. So we are a HUD certified housing counseling agency. So we, as an organization, and we're actually getting our HUD audit next week. So we are, in fact, a HUD certified housing counseling agency, but we're also a community-based organization that really focuses on identifying and responding to the needs of the Northwest side of Chicago, specifically Belmont-Cragin, which is a community that has largely been middle class and Polish, but recently has had an influx of low-income Latino families moving into the neighborhood due to gentrification and displacement from other areas. So we're thinking about how to uniquely address that challenge and the challenge that the community faces, one of which is underemployment and unemployment. So we really have our ears and eyes to the ground. We do a lot of door knocking, door-to-door canvassing, surveying, focus group. We rely a lot on that data and what we hear from community residents to design and not only design, but also really move forward and advance our work. All of our board members are community members or partners in the community, so our governing body really focuses on what's happening on the community on the ground. And so one of the things that we did hear from the community was the need for greater workforce services and supports. And so that's a little bit about us. In addition to that work, if we want to go to the next slide, we do a couple other things. We have a financial opportunity center, so we do provide resources around utility assistance, around SNAP, TANF, as well as the government assistance phones, link cards, CTA, transit passes, you name it, a variety, Medicare, Medicaid, variety of services, and we embed Cara and Marielle into that financial opportunity center, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. We also, as I said, do community organizing and leadership development, and just this year we've launched a community development corporation to focus on business development as well as land acquisition and holding so that we can help preserve affordability and development on the northwest side of the city through that community development corporation. So before I turn it over to Cara Connects and Sasha and Marielle, a little bit about how this started. I was actually in a leadership program with some of the folks at Cara and Cara Connects in 2015. And through that program, we had to identify one of our greatest challenges as an organization. And what I stated was that for us, the number one reason why people are losing their homes, can't afford their rent, or can't buy a home is due to unemployment or underemployment. The second reason is medical expenses that result in unemployment or underemployment. And third was a change in family status, which often is divorce or death, which also means that there's underemployment or unemployment in the household. And so for us, we really had this challenge that we couldn't address our work in terms of housing people if they didn't have jobs. So I always would scratch my head and say, what could we do to get folks in our community good jobs? We're not a workforce development agency. We're not a job training agency. We don't have that expertise. We don't have that knowledge. And so it was always something that I thought of in the back of my head, but just always pushed back there because we have so much work we're doing in the forefront. So starting to have conversations with Cara Connects, which is an organization here in Chicago, and they'll share more about what they do. They were located downtown, and we're located on the northwest side. And if anyone's from Chicago or knows, there's about 45-minute drive from downtown to any of the neighborhoods because of traffic. So we said there's a big barrier for us and the people that we serve to get downtown to Cara, and we had no workforce development agency in our neighborhood or on the northwest side. So we came up with a crazy idea of why not bring Cara Connects to our office, and that was hatched in 2016 and took us about 2 years to realize. And I'll stop there because I think Sasha and Marielle can really share what that looks like, but that's a little bit of background on how this really started through conversation and through relationships and the importance of relationship building and developing that partnership prior to the work actually being done. And that was what I think was really key in this scenario. So with that said, we can go to the next slide and hear from our friends at Cara Connects.
Thank you, James. This is Sasha. Hi, everybody. Sasha Ontenko. So thank you, Bruce. I really value your attempts. But I'm the director of Cara Connects, and so thank you, James, for the context. To give you a little more information on our workforce development organization, you'll see on this slide that Cara Connects is a mission-driven contract staffing firm dedicated to sourcing quality candidates to fill critical entry-level positions at leading Chicago area companies. And we are a staffing firm that is under the umbrella of Cara Chicago. So that's the logo that's on the lower right-hand side. And Cara Chicago has been around since 1991, and we launched Cara Connects, a staffing firm, in 2013 in response to the evolving hiring needs that we saw in the marketplace post-recession. So something really interesting that I've thought about more recently is how aligned our efforts with Northwest Housing Center also follow what's happening externally, because I know Northwest Housing Center's focus on the community really blew up when post-recession and everything that was happening with the predatory lending. What we saw on the workforce side was a lot more individuals finding themselves unstable, although they had come off of really great careers and possessing great experience. And so being able to respond to that change in the marketplace, we launched a staffing firm to create additional opportunities and generate income for those participants while working to place them into permanent full-time jobs. And Cara Chicago has a lot of different ways that we provide employment resources, but everything that's much more focused on socio-emotional skills, career training, resume assistance, and most importantly, access to our employer partners. We have a dedicated team of 10 that works tirelessly 24/7, it feels like sometimes. We're so passionate of maintaining employer partnerships and working intentionally to advocate for our participants and getting them into really great companies. So we vet companies and we vet our participants, and you'll see some of the names of leading companies that we've had longstanding relationships with, including Hilton Hotels, Whole Food Markets, JP Morgan Chase, Italy, Sodexo. So we're across all industries. We are serving participants from all over the city, which leads to our side of the premise. I know James explained really what he and his organization identified as a need in the community, that being additional income sources to really better serve the clients and that are located in their neighborhood. We at Cara really identified our need to expand our reach beyond the demographic we've historically served, which has been predominantly African American, and in the west, on the west side and on the south side. And so north and northwest was kind of out of the realm of what we knew, and we had organizations that we were partnered with, but not any that also specifically were open to working with us, because specifically working with us, but also serving the demographic that we wanted to go after and really create more access to employment opportunities. So namely Latinos, other immigrant populations that we found were underrepresented in our candidate pools. And coming together, we really felt our recipients could better achieve personal goals by addressing their employment needs. And so lo and behold, we have our partnership, and James mentioned it beginning in 2016, and what started as something where we could have just worked on a referral basis, like as in James's team refers people to CARA, they'd have to come downtown. It really became apparent how much more we wanted to be present within the communities, and as a staffing firm that's mission driven, we wanted to differentiate ourselves from like organizations and really meet individuals where they're at. So we started with what we call onboardings, coming up regularly to Northwest Side Housing Center, meeting job-seeking clients, and working to get them placed. And we really felt a lot of success in that first year, so we sought to deepen it. Before I jump too far ahead, I just want to make sure that the next slide makes sense. So I want to say that the next slide, okay, go straight to co-location. I thought there was an additional slide on some of our other data points, but that's all good. So I covered the first part about the needs that we identified and how our partnership went from doing onboardings, and we wanted to really look at what a dedicated presence at Northwest Side Housing Center, what that could do in really having a regular presence and someone that could identify and effectively engage the residents in that neighborhood. And so I will turn it over to Mariel Corona, our staffing account manager, as she is our dedicated staffing account manager that currently works out of Northwest Side Housing Center, and she'll speak a little bit more on what co-location looks like today.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Bear with me, I'm getting over a cold. So I'm Mariel, I'm the staffing account manager for Care Connects over at Northwest Side Housing Center. Like Sasha said, basically we've married organizations now, and I've been here since September 2018. So in the past few months, I've had the opportunity to meet with about 130 clients of Northwest Side Housing Center. Like James mentioned before, these clients are people who are coming in because of foreclosure prevention. They're also coming in for the FOC services such as LIHEAP and CEDA. And basically the root of all of that is because of underemployment and unemployment. So basically it's a handoff. So walk-in basis or by appointments, they get to speak to me and what is the best way for CARA Chicago to help them. So we have 4 different portals. For CARA Connects, one of the portals is usually, well, not usually, but it is designed for people who have more current work history, who can basically start an assignment tomorrow, start a permanent job tomorrow. But there's also other portals that we offer to them. So one of them is also going through a 4-week unpaid training at our downtown location, which is, during this time, they're being trained on what we call 5 core competencies. So the soft skills, as Sasha talked about earlier, and these are professionalism, time management, conflict management, communication, and team building. We've realized in these past 27 years that these are essentials for being successful on the job. So it's wonderful and it's great when you have a degree and 10 years experience in all this, but those soft skills are what matter, and they're what actually make you successful on the job. And that's actually how we measure. One of the ways that we measure success is when someone is placed in a permanent position and they're there for at least 1 year. So basically that's what makes CARA Chicago kind of the champion, I guess, of workforce organization, as we're 20 points above the national average. So meeting the clients here at Northwest Side Housing Center, like James mentioned also, very heavily Latino, Eastern European community here in the Belmont-Cragen neighborhood and surrounding Northwest neighborhoods of Chicago. So it's intentionally my role, one of the qualifications was to be bilingual. In my experience, it's Spanish speaking, so they can better help and serve these clients coming in through Northwest Side Housing Center. This has also one of the challenges that we're currently having, because I do meet people who do not speak English at all, and our training is in English. However, we have been able to work with them, whether it's through translating information for them and through conversation, to help them find these jobs. Just recently, from the 130 people that I've met so far up to this point, up to right now, 6 of these people we've already placed in a permanent position, regardless of the language barrier or other barriers they may have. 31 of these people have actually come to an onboarding that we do, which is a course of 3 days. So we're by no means transactional at all. During this onboarding, we're doing a vetting process. We're engaging with the clients. We're getting to know them on a personal level, listening to their needs, because by no means are we just placing an individual in any job. We've also vetted these 65 to 70 different companies as well, because we know that they're offering a livable wage, they're offering benefits, and overall stick to the FOC model and Northwest Side Housing Center's mission of improving the quality of life of these people. Pretty much that is what I'm doing here. My work is meeting with these clients, seeing what's the best portal for them to come through CARA, getting them a placement, a job, whether it's a temporary job, a permanent job, or a direct hire permanent job. The end goal is to find them a permanent quality job. With that being said, I mean, it just depends on what the person is looking for, full-time or just part-time, but know that it is a quality job that will help them sustain their lives and improve the lives of their communities as well.
And to jump back in, thank you, Mariel. This is Sasha again. So Mariel highlighted some metrics. We are continuing to measure this pilot year with Northwest Side Housing Center and having her presence there. And I'm glad that you brought up, Mariel, that the bilingual qualification was mandatory when we wrote the job description for this role, which was intentional. One thing that we did in our, just in self-reflection and organizational reflection, is understanding, like, if we haven't been able to better access and engage communities, certain communities and certain demographics, a lot of that might have to do with the fact that we might be ill-equipped to engage effectively. And so Mariel is our first bilingual Spanish staffing account manager personnel, which is important to us. That's actually worked in utilizing her skills intentionally. We have a couple of other bilingual staff members, but to use it intentionally to really help the community was important to us. And one other thing I just wanted to highlight, like where these metrics fall in sort of the total performance of CARA, because again, we're working together to drive one another's organization's top line objectives. And for us, we're in year 5 of our operation. We've brought in over $1 million in revenue the last few years, and our goal is to create 300 jobs this year alone, just through our staffing firm. We do have one other business called Clean Slate that rolls up to CARA Chicago, and then all the active direct hire activity, those job placements are all staff members coming out of CARA. So it's a very dynamic model, but it's important to note that the activity that we're experiencing and the outcomes that we're experiencing out of co-location are already directly impacting and helping drive what we seek to do as an organization within workforce development. And I think it's important that for us to continue evolving and best meeting the needs of the city of Chicago, we have to really look at where our deficits were and know that collaboration is really, and I would argue in many instances, the best way to go about achieving real solutions, effective solutions for the constituents that we serve. It's very easy to want to do it yourself. Perhaps, I know sometimes the funding is there, and that's why organizations adapt their model to be able to match those requirements. But I personally am proud of what our organizations have done in coming together, respecting our own models, and actually drawing upon the strengths of each to create the most impact in the community. And I believe that wraps our presentation. So we can take questions. And there's our
Well,
contact
great.
information.
This sounds excellent. Thank you for the presentation. So we've got groups from all across the United States who are on the phone right now. If they were interested in trying to figure out this kind of model for their local agency, are there equivalent groups? Where would they start? How would they how would they get this off the ground in a way that's functional, that doesn't drain the resources, that the bills get paid, that sort of thing?
I can jump in first, and I imagine James and Mariel have other things they might want to add. I think it really starts with relationship building, and really, like I would first start, as we had done. James mentioned, within his network, but we've done the same at Cara Connects, and really continuing to stay relevant and just stay connected. Looking at our existing partners and really understanding our own core value proposition and where there's alignment in other partners that you're already working with is where our starting point was, and piloting, just going for it. I think we spend a lot of time often thinking, and we have to think and prepare. I'm not saying that we just irresponsibly launched something. This was a 2-year in the making type of partnership, but when I would say almost immediately when we identified that we both recognized the quality delivery of service and the values alignment between us, and the deficits in the need that we wanted to address that our models were not addressing, but we saw that this other organization, this partner organization, it was just a matter of continuing to deepen trust and start small. And that's what our onboardings, doing what we called mobile onboarding at Northwest Side Housing Center, addressed. And so we were able to just start with a few onboardings. I think we did them quarterly and started meeting the clients and offered services and really saw to continuous learning, really measuring success at each point and deepening along the way. So while we haven't even touched on everything, there's, like James mentioned, the Northwest Side Community Development Corporation. That's much more of a jobs creation focus. I'm super excited about that because one of the goals of co-location, an additional dimension, is that job creation and being able to tap into what we've always believed was perhaps a jobs desert, and how can we not only create more resources but help support any of the small businesses that are there through staffing or through just continuous support and working together to do that. That way individuals don't have to leave their neighborhood and drive 45 to 2 hours out of their home to go to work. That makes it so difficult for quality of life. So I think regular interactions, just in our case it was very organic, but listening to the community, looking at our data and just identifying those service gaps and the strengths in other organizations is where we started. I know you asked specifically, Bruce, about about any other organizations, and we actually worked to, we had an intern who did from the University of Chicago's Booth Graduate School of Business that assisted us with some market research. And when we were exploring the idea of co-location, this type of partnership, we were curious as well about any existing models. And we really did not find any of that exemplify what we hope to achieve, or that looked like a housing and a business kind of partnership, or a nonprofit and a for-profit. We're looking at lots of different models, and the closest that we found was an organization called Teen Force in Silicon Valley, and they work with foster youth and helping them get set up for success, and employment being important to them as well. That organization, Teen Force, chose to co-locate in a way within Goodwill Industries of Silicon Valley, which has its own staffing firm. So that was the closest sort of alignment we saw. But it would have been as if Northwest Side Housing Center decided to come to the Cara Connects office, and we did it in reverse because we wanted to tap into the trust capital and the relationships built that were so deeply rooted in Northwest Side Housing Center and Belmont Cragen.
Great. So, Melody, have we got some questions?
Sure. Could you guys just go into a bit more detail, the reasons? I think James, you said that one of the reasons that people could not sustain a job was medical. What was the other reason? And some detail about that for the attendees?
Yeah, from the Northwest Side Housing Center standpoint, the other issue with death and divorce, as well as medical expenses for us.
So it's worth us understanding what actually happens. So somebody comes into your program. So somebody comes to the Northwest Side Housing Center offices, and they, let's say they're unemployed and they've been chronically unemployed. What would happen on site, and would some things have to happen off site as well?
Sure. So if one of the staff members here is working with a specific client, they usually ask them, like, why have you fallen behind on your mortgage or your light bill, your gas bill? And it's usually, I'm unemployed, like you said, or underemployed. They then refer them to me, which is just a few steps away, and ask them if they'd like to speak to me, learn more about how they can become employed. Once I meet the person, there's a little bit of an assessment. So if you recall, I said there's 4 different portals in which we can help a person. So if it's a person who's been unemployed for more than a year, and this is for several reasons, it might be health related, it might be they just haven't had any luck, or they raised a family, got married, I mean, whatever it is, then they would then be a candidate for the Classic program because they need to be reintroduced to the workplace setting. At Cara downtown, we have that 4-week unpaid training is a work assimilation. You're punching in at 8:20, you're punching out at 5 p.m. You have a 1-hour lunch, 2 15-minute breaks. You're expected to dress professionally best you can. So it's really just reintroducing you to that workplace, that structure. If the person that I meet tells me, oh, well, I've just been recently unemployed for 6 months, I ask them the type of employment they had. Usually with Connects, it's people who have more of an office setting type or specific skills, hard skills that are employable now. And the next steps for them would be attending an onboarding, and that's when our vetting process begins. So this vetting process, regardless of which portal you come in through, it's across the board. We do background checks, we do drug testing, we do what we call a stability check. So on our team at Cara, we have individual development specialists who ask you about things such as housing, healthcare, childcare, because all of these things will affect you at the workplace. You know, if you don't have a babysitter, you see yourself calling in saying I don't have childcare. So we do that stability check so that we could get your referral right away, so that you could be successful on the job. So it's more of an assessment when I'm meeting these people, and just figuring out what's the best portal for us to quickly help them to find employment. The journey looks different for everyone. Some people may get employed in weeks, and some people may take months. It all depends on the industry and the type of skills that you have and the education, you know, just as anyone else applying for a job. The only real advantage there is, as Sasha said, is all about partnerships, relationships. So because we have these 65 corporate employment partners, we've built this relationship with them. We've basically built rapport and trust. So they know that when we send them a candidate, this person will be successful on the job, will stick and stay. So basically, it's just also building that relationship with these individuals who are mostly coming in at this point, you know, under a lot of stress. You know, they're almost panic, you know, the fear of losing your home, the fear of having your gas cut off, things like that. So it's just building that relationship and that trust, knowing that they can trust us in helping them. Basically, that's really what it is. So it turns into more of a conversation, and just addressing like the issues that we can help them with.
So James, if what would you recommend for housing counseling agency that's thinking, I would like to do something like this, how do I get started? What would your kind of basic strategic plan there?
Yeah, I think similarly to what Sasha and Mariel said is that for us, it started in that relationship. It started in knowing who's in your community, who are the partners, what's the lay of the land in your local area, and then having those conversations. I think the Northwest Side Housing Center is happy to have those conversations with any agency that maybe wants to hear a little more one-on-one from us or hear how we did it. We're happy to do that, and I think, researching who the good agencies are in your area is that we can't do everything. And so I think we have to be strategic about where we put our resources.
Well, this sounds great. I think it's a fascinating piece of work here. Thank you so much all for coming in. We'd be interested in maybe hearing a progress report in a year or so if this grows and you've got more lessons that are worth our learning about. But this sounds like excellent work, and congratulations to all of you for doing it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So let's move on quickly to, we've got our membership dues plug coming in. So we had a very good year last year, and this year has started out in a nice, strong way. So certainly if you haven't joined yet, please consider doing so. You can go to our website, and in the upper right-hand corner or somewhere on there is an easy to find link to our membership form and membership page. The real thing is that you're funding the work that we do so that we're able to independently go to Congress and do the kind of work that Melody's doing, as well as all the educational things and other things that we work on. There's an added benefit of the discount on the credit reports that we have through Credco, CoreLogic, and we're glad to make that available to people. And probably more than half the groups that work with us now use that. But I think the main reason for joining is really to support this work and continue to help spread and expand our ability to strengthen the housing counseling community. So please keep that in mind and join if you haven't. And it's been a good year for renewing, but if you haven't renewed and you're due, please get on that as well. So that sounds good. So next week, or in 2 weeks, about April 4th, let's start out with that. We're going to have an interesting presentation. Ellie, can you explain what we're going to do?
Sure. Hi, everybody. We have been talking at NHRC about thinking of some innovative ways to create affordable housing, and we are going to have next leaders in housing counseling call Next Steps, who are doing some pretty interesting things with manufactured housing to create affordable housing. So they're going to be on to talk about what they're doing and some of the work that they're doing to expand into different areas. They started in Kentucky and they've begun to grow. And we're also hoping to have Doug Ryan from Prosperity Now to kind of talk about the national picture and what he thinks could be beneficial related to legislation and regulation and so on. So that's our call for the 4th.
So, and our goal here is that, so don't think about this as mobile homes. Think about this as a different way of building and making housing. It reduces the cost, but some of this housing would look like any other new construction that you see. And we'll probably have multiple conversations on this, but the idea is, are there things that can be done that can bring down the cost so that on the affordability spectrum, one of the challenges is that new construction has gotten to be quite expensive. This is a strategy that brings down those costs. But there are groups that are working in the field to really up the quality of the product that gets done and to make it more kind of fit into the communities that we work in. So with that in mind, this is an innovative organization that has its own housing counseling and education component. I think they're a HUD-approved housing counseling agency, but they're also really doing community development work in manufactured housing. So partly I'm interested in the conversation, not expecting you all to start building housing this way, though some of you might, but more that we need to start socializing our thought process about making this maybe one of the acceptable tools that's available to our clients. So it's part of the conversation here about affordability and how do we tackle those problems that we're going to have an ongoing conversation about.
Yes, and to be clear, Next Step works pretty closely with housing counseling to provide education and ongoing counseling for the people who end up purchasing these homes.
Great, perfect. Okay, well, thanks everybody for a good call, and we'll talk on April 4th.